From the TV30 studio, here's Jim Schneider.
Well, hi, and welcome to inFocus. We appreciate you joining us every week at this same time as we talk about issues. Sometimes it's a local impact, sometimes a state impact, sometimes national impact, sometimes all of the above. And certainly we're going to be talking about a number of issues here tonight that should raise our eyebrows a little bit, some of the things that are being introduced into the legislature, other matters that we will certainly bring to your attention that are out there that have a public affairs interest for you here this evening. Did you know, for instance, that legislation has been introduced in the state of Wisconsin that would allow 17-year-olds to vote, certain 17-year-olds? Some would eliminate abortion restrictions. Some legislation would legalize the medical use of marijuana. Some legislation would bring about an equal rights amendment to the state of Wisconsin, and yet others would prohibit a parental choice school from having a virtual school and really targeting in on education here in the state. We'll cover that and much more on the program tonight for our monthly legislative update. And with me tonight, we have Daniel Degner, who is president of Wisconsin Family Council. Hi, Daniel. Good to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim.
And these weeks go by very quick in between programs.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like we were here just last week, but it was a month ago already.
Yeah. And also Sam Krebs, Legislative Director for Wisconsin Family Action. Sam, good to have you back.
Good to see you.
So just give me a word about your organizations before we get into the issues. Just a word about Wisconsin Family Council.
Yeah, so Wisconsin Family Council, our mission is to advance Judeo-Christian principles and values by strengthening, preserving, and promoting God's design for marriage and family, life, and religious freedom. And our vision is that we would see Wisconsin where God is honored, life is cherished, families thrive, and religious freedom flourishes.
Great. And Wisconsin Family Action?
Yeah, Jim, so Wisconsin Family Action is a sister organization of Wisconsin Family Council, so the same mission and vision, just how we carry out is a little bit differently. We're specifically express advocacy, so we're going to the Capitol every week on behalf of Christians across the state, letting them know what we think about bills that are being passed and evaluate them through the lens of a biblical perspective.
Okay. Well, lots of things are being introduced right now. We'll get into some of those matters here and gain your perspective on them. But first of all, I noticed in light of the government shutdown, Governor Evers has declared a state of emergency. What power or authority does that give him, Sam?
Jim, honestly, it's political gamesmanship. I read the order and it says, hey, agencies, the powers that you already have, you've got them. And that's all it says. It says, hey, you can do what you already have the power to do. Mm-hmm. And that's it. So it's literally just a game that they're playing to try to, push blame here, blame there. But it does almost absolutely nothing to the actual effect of, what is happening in people's lives day to day.
So nothing like we saw him actions like during COVID in which he had all these different mandates?
No, I haven't seen anything come out yet of that regard. It's pretty benign.
And ironically, what I've seen too is there's been a lot of back and forth pushback on the SNAP benefits and the food stamp benefits. However, what we've seen is Evers still has COVID money that he could actually direct towards those SNAP benefits, but he's refusing to do so as part of that political gamesmanship.
He's got the authority to do it just by a stroke of a pen. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that Democrats in the Senate have had 14 votes, and every vote that they have voted to keep the government shut down. There are people across this country in different states that are going to the polls tomorrow. New Jersey has a governor's race, Virginia governor's race. We know that a very important mayoral race in New York City and Minneapolis. This is an off-year election. We don't have anything in Wisconsin going, do we?
No, Jim, you're right. It's an off year, so there may be some special elections locally here and there in pockets, but for the most part, people will not have to be going to the polls in a few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anything, there's some special elections, and even in our office, I was taken by surprise. We had a local person reach out from my own community that asked, hey, should I vote for this person? But it was a special election, open seat for municipal judge. So there might be some elections like that, but they're special elections or small referendum, those sort of things.
Okay, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we've got some important elections coming up in 2026. First in the spring. Sam, a comment on those?
Right, so in the spring, you'll have a lot of your municipal and county board elected officials up for re-election, school board, things like that. But the big one will be the Supreme Court race that'll be held right now. The two announced candidates are Chris Taylor, who is a former Planned Parenthood director, now is a Dane County Circuit Court judge, going against Maria Lazar, who would be the conservative in this case, who's an appeals court judge currently.
Okay, unless a third person jumps in, we'll not have a primary. just the general election in April.
That's correct.
Okay. And then, Daniel, also this fall, too, we're watching with bated breath what's going on. And we know that there's been an announcement made since you were last here for the Attorney General's race.
Yeah, and the fall election, we're going to see there's going to be a lot of ramp up as we get closer and closer. And Wisconsin is one of those swing states that has national viewing in it. So we have the gubernatorial race. Governor Evers has said he is not running for re-election, which has really opened up a huge Democrat primary that we're expecting for that race. There's 2 Republican candidates running, Josh Shulman, the Washington County Executive, and Congressman Tom Tiffany from the Northwoods. And then there's other races like Attorney General. It's likely going to be a rematch of 2022 of Democrat Josh Kaul versus the Republican Eric Toney. We'll also have statewide ballot issues, a ballot issue potentially, but then also state treasurer, secretary of state, the sheriffs around our state, and then we'll also have half of our state senate as well as all of our state assembly seats will be up.
2026, a pivotal year.
Yeah, Jim, the election ads will be coming sooner rather than later, and hope everyone can buckle up and endure all those.
Right, and endure them. So let's talk about the election for just a moment. Here is a headline that was in the Center Square. 41,000 Wisconsin voter registrations don't match the driver and ID database. And then we have Attorney General Josh Kaul appeals ruling requiring election officials to verify voters' citizenship status. And then, just recently, a Waukesha County judge puts on hold the ruling that would require checking citizenship of all Wisconsin voters. The question is, what's going on?
So kind of take those in order, Jim. The first one, Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is doing a really great job on the election integrity front. They've been in contact with the federal DOJ in regards to those discrepancies in the database checks. And so I think it's important to note that discrepancies don't immediately mean fraud, but it is kind of surprising to see over and over again the Wisconsin Election Commission is failing in their duty to have functional, clear and accurate voter rolls. And so when you look at the next thing that there is the checking of citizenship of all Wisconsin voters, I think this is settled and put to bed because we just had a constitutional amendment that passed overwhelmingly that we amended the Constitution to say that every person who votes must be a citizen. And yet here we have Attorney General Josh Kaul pushing against the practical reality of that, of checking everyone to be a citizen, and he's appealing that decision. We'll see where that goes. The judge has put a hold on that ruling to kind of allow more discovery. I think both sides want to have more facts be involved in that case, so we'll be monitoring that closely.
Yeah, many are concerned about the integrity of the vote.
Yeah, they're concerned about the integrity of the vote. And for some people, too, they're concerned because there is a hold on this. Originally, the Waukesha County judge ruled in favor of the conservative viewpoint on this for the conservative attorneys to make sure that they would clean up those voter rolls and ensure citizenship. And there was questions of, well, why would he put a hold? And this was a request even by the conservative attorneys. And part of the reason was when Josh Kaul came in to try to overtake and appeal the case, they knew that this case would then go to Dane County, expecting Dane County liberal judges to then overturn that ruling. And so this gives them an opportunity to get more through discovery.
Little seems to be getting done as far as Madison concerned, bills that become actual laws. But here's one law that actually did come about, and Governor Evers signed into law banning cell phones in public schools. Our kids are struggling. This was a bipartisan measure?
Yes, it was, Jim. It's funny you mentioned that. So Wisconsin Family Council puts on a summer camp every year, leadership camp for teens. And that was actually one of the bills they discussed. They go through various pieces of Wisconsin legislation, kind of debate them, and that's one of them that we had selected for them to debate. And now it's actually become law. I think on the whole, we'll see positive results from that because essentially you're pulling out those distractions from the classroom. A study actually just came out from Florida, maybe just a week or two ago, that showed that test scores rose substantially after they implemented a cell phone use ban in the classroom. So I would expect to see some of that in Wisconsin hopefully take place as well.
Yeah, well, I was, before I came on staff with Wisconsin Family Council in 2019, 2020, I was in seminary and also serving as a substitute teacher, and it was amazing. I was in one school district that did allow for cell phones in the classroom, and another that had a complete ban, and the academics, the behaviors, everything was totally night and day difference. And our real hope is that we'll see education be strengthened in the state of Wisconsin as part of this bill.
We will hope so. So will they check cell phones in at the principal's office every day, or
So there's some parameters within the bill of that, but it's ultimately left to the school districts of how to best implement the policy. I think there's pretty tight restrictions on what the exceptions might be, but we'll see how the school districts decide to implement that effectively, because local control, they have the ability to decide how they're going to carry that out.
There was a very concerning headline that was in the Capital Times here just recently, and it read 200 teachers, sexual misconduct, grooming cases shielded from the public. And then we also have this, utterly absent as Wisconsin lawmakers question sexual misconduct investigations. What's happening in our schools? What is the Department of Public Instruction not telling the people in the state?
Yeah, Jim, it's honestly really a bad look for Jill Underley, the state superintendent and DPI. I think, as you alluded to, when this news story broke, the legislature immediately held a public hearing. Hey, what's going on? What's happening here? We want more information.
Cap Times is not known as being a conservative paper.
No, sir, it is not. They are not inclined to, they're generally leaning towards the left, and so they usually, their stories with that slant, protecting people, who have a left-leaning perspective. But Jill Underley has come under, roundly criticized both from the left and the right for failing to show up. She actually had, the opportunity to defend, actions of DPI in this situation, and she decided to go out of state to accept an award from her alma mater instead of actually showing up and doing her job. And that's, I think concerning. If this had happened during an election year, she was just reelected in this past spring. If that had happened, just a year ago, I think she'd be looking at losing her job likely. At this point, though, she has 3 years of, 3.5 years of her term left to serve out. So we'll see how that impacts, future elections. But I believe the Senate is holding a public hearing as well this week, and Underley is committed to showing up. We'll see how that all plays out. I'd offer some caution, jumping to conclusions with this. It seems like based on the facts of the story, that there are a lot of these situations we don't know, how there were these investigations conducted against these teachers that were accused of sexual misconduct. Where was law enforcement involved? Was there law enforcement involved in these situations? So I think there's going to be a lot of coming out from these hearings of future bills that might address are there gaps in the law, are there opportunities where law enforcement should be further engaged in holding these people accountable, but ultimately the Department of Public Instruction, Jill Underley, need to be held accountable for their role in reporting this to the public, making sure they're aware, and if they're failing to do that, I think people should be taking notice and keeping that in their brain for a long time going forwards.
And Daniel, this is why there are many who have chosen schools other than the government school system as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And some of the things that Sam mentioned are a huge concern for us and many families. One of the things, especially from an election perspective, that we believe the public should have been aware of and should know is this open records request started last November. And as Sam said, there was an election for this position in April, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that think that maybe this was held from the public during that election season because they didn't want the Cap Times to have that as part of the election for this spring. And so it's really unfortunate the public was not aware of it. But this is definitely, as you mentioned, a huge concern for many families. We've seen Attorney General Josh Kaul and others on the left have done a lot to voice out different concerns of sexual misconduct in religious circles. But we see time and time again that this is more common in our public school system. And one of the big concerns we saw as a follow-up article to that Cap Times article is the amount of money it was costing for open records requests for people to search their own local school district to see if they had issues like that locally. And we believe that those sort of issues should be transparent. We should have transparency for these families so they can know their kids are safe in a public school classroom.
Friends, this is our legislative update here for the month of November. Yes, we're in November already, and covering many issues that have transpired since our last update here in October. And last week on the program, we covered this as we had a pro-life emphasis on the program, but I'd like to get your comments on this as well. And this was the announcement coming from, here's the headline, this from lifenews.com, Wisconsin Planned Parenthood will kill thousands of babies in abortion. And they announced they were starting up the abortion procedures again.
Right, Jim. So about a month ago, Planned Parenthood had announced that they were going to put a pause on their abortion services here in Wisconsin. All along, we knew that they were going to try some sort of angle with this. We weren't quite sure where they were going with this, but ultimately it was a ploy to try to get as much Medicaid money as they could. And so what they did is they gave up a certain federal designated status as a provider in order to continue to receive Medicaid money. Time will tell if that actually a ploy will work, but what it really does is it reveals their motivations. It's not about health care for women. It's not about providing or protecting women. It's about how can we pump as many dollars into the abortion machine as possible. And that's what this whole month-long pause kind of shows us is it wasn't about serving women. It's about how do we fund abortion with taxpayer dollars to full extent.
Yeah, huge money going in, Daniel.
Yeah, and one of the things with this too, we just saw, especially in Wisconsin, just how crazy the abortion industry was. There was an abortion clinic in Milwaukee this last month that they had a thing where donate to our abortion clinic and we'll allow you to throw your name for our abortion machine to be able to give that and to celebrate that. But especially with this, we saw again that Planned Parenthood tries to convey and change the different language on things to benefit a pro-abortion agenda. Sam will be in the Capitol in the near future speaking on a bill that would define abortion to really make sure that we honor and protect those that have ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, to show that's not an abortion. And it was interesting to me in this Planned Parenthood press release where they were going to announce they're providing abortions again. They had a difference between miscarriage care and abortions. And so in this circumstance, they were okay to separate it. But in this legislative hearing, we expect them to oppose that bill.
Interesting. Some debate going back and forth in our legislature regarding a resolution honoring Charlie Kirk. That was quite an interesting debate, and some people really made known their hate and disgust for Charlie.
Yeah, Jim, and I would encourage people, sometimes, we talk about these things. You can find all of this online, whether it's the legislative website or a website called Wisconsin Eye, where you can actually go back and watch legislative sessions or committee hearings. So that's actually what I did. I went on Wisconsin Eye and I watched this back because I couldn't believe my ears when people were giving me reports of what's happening. So to kind of lay it out, the Senate and Assembly authored a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk and his life and his legacy. And what followed was kind of disgusting, honestly, because first of all, the Democrats in the Senate tried to essentially water down the resolution. And so when that was rejected, they turned to every trick that they could in the book to delay or to just not have a vote on this resolution to honor Charlie Kirk. And so, and I can understand, objectionably, that if a person disagreed with Charlie Kirk, what he stood for, maybe you vote no on the resolution. Maybe you voice your opinion on why you disagree with Charlie Kirk. But to rise to the level of using every single opportunity to just delay the vote and try not even have a vote on this really showed the baseness of their character on this, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for us, what was concerning too is we saw only one Democrat in the entire state legislature voted in favor of this. And I read the resolution in of itself. It was, in its essence, it was a call to pray for Charlie's family. It was a call to pray for America, that we would no longer see political violence and we would honor his life. And to us, it was just really unfortunate to see such vitriol and such hatred towards, and it wasn't necessarily Charlie, it was the values that Charlie represented, those biblical values. One of the things I'll remember of this is what Sam shared in our office was one of the legislators had said on the House floor, she thought Charlie Kirk was a Christian who picked and chose what passages of the Bible to promote. And we would argue that no, the Bible is very clear on its pro-life ethic. The Bible is very clear on its sexual ethic, and Charlie did an excellent job of promoting those values and issues through a biblical worldview.
There was testimony that took place in the Wisconsin Assembly. This was the task force on protecting kids, and gathered at the Capitol last Wednesday. We have a brief clip here of Sam as he testified, and then we'll have you come back and comment on it.
Well, today, the Wisconsin Assembly Task Force on Protecting Kids met at the state capitol. The task force discussed several aspects of today's digital age on kids' development. Their mission is to protect kids, which they say is first and foremost the responsibility of the family.
Children, more than anyone else, pay for the breakdown in marriages and the fragmenting of families. Any task force looking at how to protect children must start at the home.
Testimony focused on how state policies could create family-first habits. The group can use the testimonies to inform their discussion, debates, and proposals for new legislation to make sure kids are protected.
Sam, tell us more about this testimony. What's going on here?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, Jim. It's really a big thing, I think. So the Speaker has the opportunity to create task force at his discretion on topics they think are important that the state is facing right now. And so one of those task force topics was how to protect children in this digital age and how to empower parents to protect their kids. And the chair of that task force for their first ever informational hearing invited us to speak because they thought, and we agree, that in order to protect kids, you have to build strong families. And so we took that opportunity to share for over the course of an hour between some presentation and some questions about how Wisconsin is doing on building strong families. And sadly, Jim, the data is actually not that great. In fact, some of the things I was looking at, nearly half of all teenagers in Wisconsin grow up in a broken or never fully formed home.
Wow.
So the statistics are trending away from having strong families, and that has really big social effects that we're seeing, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's further down the line in incarceration rates, or being able to get a job, going to college. All those different things start with the family, and so that's something we presented about, ideas of how to strengthen the family, and the core around that was that every child has their best shot of success by growing up with married biological mother, father, parents. And that's a mouthful, so I'm gonna say it again.
Right.
With married biological mother, father, parents. And I think that's really important to emphasize because some of the committee didn't agree with that perspective that, mother and father, why not father and father, mother and mother? And so we wanted to make sure that the data is very clear on how important it is to have married biological mother, father, parents. And we'll continue to share those ideas of how to strengthen families with that task force, and we hope to see some good legislative ideas come out of it.
Great. We're going to quickly take a look at some proclamations that came out since our last legislative update. And Daniel will have you comment on this. A Pastoral Care Week proclamation from Governor Evers, October 19th through the 25th.
Yeah, so the Pastoral Care Week, I'll say first off, I'm just really surprised Governor Evers did this, but I'm thankful he did to really honor and thank those that do pastoral ministry, especially in hospitals and hospices, all those sort of things. But what I will say is interesting as we look ahead to the 2026 election, there are a lot of Democrats vying for that nomination that probably would not issue a proclamation like this. So it'll be interesting to see as we get closer and closer to 2026 how proclamations like that look in the future.
We also have Intersex Awareness Day that was issued a proclamation, and this was for October 26th.
Yeah, and I would say for that one, I thought it was interesting. I looked it up on my way here before we started filming, but it was interesting. This is less than 1% of the population, and so what we see time and time again is the liberal left, especially Governor Evers, is trying to use those that have intersex characteristics. It's a real thing. Sometimes people are born with parts that are both male and female, but then they're trying to push this into this non-binary and this transgender ideology and agenda, and so. It is unfortunate for those going through intersex issues, but this is being used to promote a transgender ideology, unfortunately.
And then one more proclamation here. It's got many, many proclamations, but one I wanted to bring to our viewers' attention, Adoption Month for the month of November, and then November 22nd as Adoption Day.
Yeah, and again, Adoption Month, Adoption Day, these are great things, and we're super thankful that the governor is promoting this. And as Christians, we heavily promote the idea of adoption because we are reminded that as Christians that ultimately God the Father has adopted us if we believe in Christ for the forgiveness of our sins. But overall, adoption, our state, is something that we need to continue to promote, as well as provide more avenues and ways for the legislature to remove some of the red tape to allow for more adoptions.
So those are some of those. You can go to just Google the Wisconsin governor website, and you'll find his different actions, emergency actions, proclamations, etc. You'll find that right there, and just want to bring these to your attention. We are going to go through a litany of pieces of legislation that have been introduced. We can't go in depth, but friends, we encourage you to go to the state's website. legis.state.wi.gov, I believe, is one tool that get there, and I think there's a shorter address as well.
Yep, legis.wisconsin.gov.
Okay.
Yep.
legis.wisconsin.gov, and you'll find these there. But just to bring several things to your attention, I would encourage you to have handy a sheet of paper, a pen or a pencil, so at least you can write down bill numbers as we talk about them here this evening. Time is not going to permit us to go in depth, but let me first of all talk about some election-related things. And people are concerned about ranked choice voting. This is a Senate Bill 594. Assembly Bill 516 is a companion legislation, and this would actually, in some of the nonpartisan elections, allow for ranked choice voting.
Yeah, Jim, there's been this national push for ranked choice voting. Honestly, from my perspective, it's pretty undemocratic and un-American. It essentially complicates the election system further. It creates this kind of preference system where you're able to, rank how all the candidates you like, 1 through whatever, and then kind of, if you're not in the top 2, then your vote kind of gets shifted up and around, and so it's really a convoluted system that I think takes away from the trust of elections, and hopefully we will not see that move forwards.
We're also going to look at this here. This is Assembly Bill 539. It's got a companion, we'll get it laid out here, Senate Bill 514. This would allow for voter pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds. Very interesting piece of legislation.
And Jim, it's kind of interesting to see this because you see this weird nexus of ideas of involving minors more and more in social decision making and giving them more political power, more of those things. But then on the flip side, I've also seen bills that are raising the age range of access to certain items or certain decisions up to the age of 18 to 21 and things like that. So it's kind of this weird back and forth of like, yes, they can make decisions if they're this young. No, they can't make decisions this young. And so
right.
I think what it actually sees is, because many of these are Democrat authored proposals, is you don't see a more in principle about, what are adult decisions and what are not, and specifically with the sexualization of children, specifically in this massive push on the left to do that. You don't see this more in principle of the difference between an adult and a minor. And so there's this mixture a little bit of there's no guiding principle of like how to treat kids. And so that just reminds me of that as well, as along with just the actual implementation of the policy, I think presents a lot of election integrity challenges.
Right. And then what's interesting, I watched some series of video clips here recently of Kamala Harris talking about how immature young people are even going off to college, and questions them. And she was asking questions like, well, how can, what do? We send them off to college, and then we put them in a dorm, and they've got an RA, a resident assistant, make sure that, they're making right decisions, and we give them curfews, and then argues, okay, we should give them the right to vote, which is, it was just interesting a dichotomy in her views there. But we also have Senate Bill 509 and Assembly Bill 540 that would allow 17-year-olds to vote in certain situations. Daniel.
Yeah, well, I'll say again, this is just going back to what Sam mentioned earlier. We see this dichotomy where these are also similar people that say like, oh, well, we shouldn't allow for we shouldn't allow for people that are under 21 to access tobacco products or other things, but we think we should have them voting to determine who is the next city council person or next alderman. And the one thing I will say that is good news for our viewers is each of those bills, the only people that authored them were members of the minority party. And so those bills are not going to go anywhere. However, as we talked about the importance of 2026, there is a possibility that the chambers flip in either the Assembly or the Senate, that those bills could get public hearings and could get votes in the Assembly or Senate next session.
A couple more election-related issues. This here, this is Assembly Bill 560, Senate Bill 554, that would prohibit the absentee drop box for collecting the absentee ballots. We have seen many videos of the stuffing of many ballots into these boxes. What are your thoughts on this, Sam?
Yeah, Jim, so there's kind of this whiplash of absentee ballot boxes. Are they legal? Are they not legal?
Right.
And so I think we saw the courts kind of come on different conclusions with this within, when there was a conservative Supreme Court majority versus a liberal Supreme Court majority. I think this bill is kind of more of the stick in negotiations over election integrity. There's a broader negotiation in the legislature about reforming some election integrity measures, and so I think that one is more of the stick than the carrot for the governor of, hey, we're serious about, if you're not going to play ball with us, we're going to play hardball on some of these things and just take away those options that we have distrust in right now.
Another issue here, there's been a lot of your municipalities right now, your cities, your counties are developing budgets for the upcoming year. And there are those who are seeking to have put in the wheel taxes. It's another way of getting more revenues into their coffers. And so here's a pair of bills, Assembly Bill 483 and Senate Bill 467, that deals with the local wheel tax referenda. What would we do here?
Yes. Yeah. So from what I understand with this bill, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but basically what this bill will do, so a wheel tax, the idea is we need more funding for our streets, for our roads, for our bridges. Therefore, we're going to put a tax that goes it's just a part of your car registration. So when you go to register your vehicle, instead of it being $85 for whatever it is now, it'd be an extra $30, $50, whatever that local municipality is. And then that money would go to the municipality to pay for those extra fees. And I think it's a great thing that there are legislators who are saying, if a local government wants to do that, they need to have the buy-in from the local people through a referendum vote. Yeah,
people need to decide on this. And we just saw this happen in Milwaukee where it was the mayor said, hey, we need to quick pass this, Sam, because, legislature's doing some things here. And but the people should have a say.
Yeah, and this hits home, honestly, Jim. I got an email today, this afternoon, about Dane County, where I live, that they're going to be raising property taxes by over $11 million. They're planning to raise registration fees like those that you've mentioned on cars by millions of dollars. And so that's going to hit my pocketbook specifically. And I have no input other than the election on this. And the rich part about it is they recently sent an email talking about all the wonderful services that they're going to be able to keep because of prudent budgeting. Right. And so they're going to keep all these DEI measures and all of these social services without mentioning the fact that they're raising taxes and fees on the residents of the county. And oh, by the way, we're also cutting almost 30 positions in the sheriff's department to pay for all these social services on top of the taxes and fees increases. And so other than some hearings here and there to voice our input, there is no official election or vote. Other than the board's going to vote on that and probably slam it through. I'll give you a real world example in Columbia County, which is just north of Dane County, where they had a wheel tax that was brought up by their county board. And they kind of snuck it in at the last minute, and all of a sudden this alarm going out, hey, the county board's considering a wheel tax, and the communities showed up in force. They said, we don't want this, we don't like this. And the people who were advocating for the wheel tax said, I don't know how this came to be with the committee. Right. I don't know how this got to the board for a vote. We weren't in favor of this, and they ended up not voting for it. None of them voted for it, even the people who were supportive of it, because of that public pushback. And so I think when you're engaging the public on these financial matters that hurt your pocketbook, engagement is important. So even if that bill doesn't pass or doesn't get through, you still have the opportunity to engage. You still have the opportunity to push back, and encourage people to be paying attention to those local municipal budgets, those county budgets, because your voice can matter, and will hopefully have a difference in how people hear from them in the future.
Yeah. And what Sam said is true. I think of one of my favorite accomplishments I had when I was on the city council in Fond du Lac was I killed our wheel tax proposal that the administration brought forth. But what Sam said is absolutely true. In some municipalities, what they will do is they will put it in an agenda for a public hearing, and they'll just kind of go, it'll be rubber stamped, and then next thing you know, at the next meeting, it's voted on. And so it's so important to locally look at what is on those agendas, as well as if there is a wheel tax proposed in your community, to stand up. But this is a great opportunity to make sure that people are informed through the ballot box.
Right, and they have a voice in that matter, and which I think of people here in Milwaukee City and Milwaukee County that had no voice in this recent sales tax increase that went up a couple percentage points, and in the city it went up but a few tenths of a percent in the county. And what was interesting is that these leaders said, this is going to solve our problems. This is really what we need, is going to put us on solid footing once again, financial footing, and lo and behold, now we're talking about increasing wheel taxes, and we're way behind, and the streetcar is losing millions of dollars here in the city, and we need to do more, and people aren't paying their bus fares, and we're going to raise the parking fees, and we're going to issue X number more tickets this year because we need the revenues.
Yeah, well, and everyone in City Hall got a pay raise with the sales tax.
They did. So let's move on to some other issues here. And this is Senate Bill 524 and Assembly Bill 524. And this is in regard to the raising the legal age for the sale of like cigarettes and vaping products, etc.
Jim, I have to say, I love when the bill numbers match up. It makes it much easier to remember. But yeah, just what we were talking about, I think this is a bill that is raising the age 18 to 21, as we talk about that nexus of, okay, so you're not capable to make decisions about smoking at 18, but you're old enough to vote at 16 or 17. So it's kind of this juxtaposition of you can't have it both ways, can you? I don't quite understand the logic there.
Okay, we're going to hit some of the resolutions here that have come up, and we understand that these are proposed constitutional amendments. The first one is Assembly Joint Resolution 108. Its companion in the Senate is Senate Joint Resolution number 98. And this deals with basically like an equal rights amendment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things too that I would say the left has done a really good job on their aspect is trying to do messaging, because it sounds like equal rights, like that's a great thing. But what we see, especially from a religious liberty perspective and a pro-family perspective, is this resolution would really try to promote and advance in LGBT, especially the transgender ideology, and take away religious freedom.
Yeah, let me just share this from the summary, and then Sam will have you comment. equality of rights on the basis of sex, gender identity, race, color, sexual orientation, disability, religion, national origin, marital status, family status, age, ancestry, or any other immutable characteristic in creating a private cause of action for violation of these rights. Now, we talk about these sexual orientations, Sam, are they immutable?
Well, Jim, kind of 2 points on that. First is to go back to basics of what is a right. I think a lot of legislators have become bought into this ideology that anything that I really, 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 really want is a right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's to me a form of wokeness is that anything that I want, I should get, and therefore it's a right to me. And anyone who stands in my way is a tyrant, and how dare you stand in the way of what I want? And so I think that we really have to actually, go back to civics class a little bit and learn about what is truly a right, and where do those rights come from? With some of the discussion we've had in the past about does government give you your rights, or the rights come from a higher power? And so I really think to begin with, the discussion has to be what is a right, and how do we get those rights? And then the second part is, I think the really concerning part is in the gender identity portion. We saw in the federal Supreme Court where they ruled on Tennessee's law about minor transgender surgeries and puberty blockers and those being prescribed. And Justice Amy Coney Barrett specifically went into why there isn't a right to gender identity and how that is not a constitutional right. That hasn't been officially decided by the Supreme Court, but in her writing she addressed that topic. And I think that's really important. You point out that immutable characteristics, and the literal definition of immutable is unchangeable. Mm-hmm. And we've seen with gender identity that's the whole point of it, is it's changeable. I can feel non-binary today, and I can feel male today, and I can feel female tomorrow. And I can, it's kind of just based on my feelings and how I feel during this. That's the exact opposite of mutable. Immutable means unchangeable. Mm-hmm. And we've seen these detransitioners, so Chloe Cole or Claire Abernathy, right. The people who have gone through some of these, puberty blockers or surgeries, and then realized that this was an ideology that infected my mind and ultimately harmed my body, but isn't actual reality. And so we see these, clear cases of detransition, and so it's not immutable. So how could you put it in law that it is immutable if it's been changing in society? So I think it's really concerning, as Dana mentioned it, from a religious freedom perspective, because I think they're going to try to use that as a cudgel over, people who have religious beliefs about, that you can't change your identity, things about sexual orientation and things like that, where it's hey, these competing rights, who has precedence then? And the courts get to decide, and with a liberal state Supreme Court, I can kind of see where that's going. And so I think it's greatly concerning. It's something to keep an eye on. As Daniel mentioned, with these legislative elections, that could be forefront priority-wise for the Democrats. So it's something to pay attention to in terms of elections as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention this is first consideration. So if they would take it up, they would have to pass 2 legislative sessions for it to pass.
Yeah, and I would say this is why 2026 is so important, because the differences that you're having between a Republican legislature or a Democrat legislature is one that a Democrat legislature would promote this bill, or this resolution, they would try to get on the ballot for 2028, and where a Republican legislature or the Republican governor probably passed legislation that protects and enshrines saving women's sports. It probably ensures that children cannot get puberty blockers or get transgender surgeries. And so it's just a totally night and day difference. But what's really scary with a constitutional amendment like this is, even if we had the right legislature and the right governor that did pass those bills to protect children in those situations, a constitutional amendment like that would totally undo any legislation.
Friends, let me also just make mention of this. Lord willing, this coming Wednesday on WVCY Radio's Crosstalk program, I'll be interviewing Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel. He has just filed recently action with the United States Supreme Court to take up the Kim Davis case. She was a county clerk in Rowan County, Kentucky, in which she refused to give marriage licenses to those that were coming from same-sex couples. She spent jail time as a result of this, and they have petitioned now. It's gone all the way through the court system up to the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court is holding a conference this coming Friday on whether to accept the hearing of this case or not. If they accept this case, friends, it has the potential to overturn the Obergefell decision that brought about so-called same-sex marriage in our state. Therefore, our constitutional amendment would be upheld. Be praying for this U.S. Supreme Court as they confer this coming Friday. and that this case would actually be picked up by them. On other issues here, we have a Senate Joint Resolution 104, Assembly Joint Resolution 111 that would bring about a Celebrate Bisexuality Day in Wisconsin.
Well, I was going to say, Jim, I feel like every time that we're here, we have some sort of new piece of legislation, some sort of new bill that the Democrats in the legislature are producing to advance an LGBT ideology. Mm-hmm. And again, we see it here. The one thing I was just going to say, based on what you were talking about before about the that U.S. Supreme Court decision, and so you may be wondering, what did Jim mean by our constitutional amendment? In 2006, Wisconsin Family Council, alongside many partners, championed a constitutional amendment that defines in our state constitution here in Wisconsin to this day that marriage is between one man and one woman. And so that would be an opportunity to bring back that law and that constitutional aspect to Wisconsin.
Great. So again, friends, please be praying for the U.S. Supreme Court as they have that conference coming up this Friday on whether or not to actually hear the case. We're going to hit a few more bills, and friends, I hope you're jotting your questions down. We'll be opening phone lines here in just a bit as well. This is Assembly Bill 546, Senate Bill number 553, and this would have limitation on the definition of abortion. Sam.
Yeah, Jim, and I'll be testifying on this bill this week in regards to our support for how do we define or differentiate between miscarriages and abortion. Mm-hmm. And sadly, both the media and certain political actors have tried to mix the definitions between miscarriage and abortion. In fact, the Planned Parenthood medical director of Wisconsin said you can't not differentiate between an abortion and miscarriage. And I would beg to differ, and we're going to present why we think there is a difference, and it is intention. A abortion is the intentional taking of a life, and a miscarriage is, while tragic and sad, is an unintentional taking of life. And those who struggle with pregnancy loss are kind of sometimes in this gray area because they hear in the media this report of like, oh, if you get a miscarriage, you might be in trouble with the law, and doctors are being misled with this. And so what this bill does is it lays out very clearly what is a miscarriage care and what is abortion care, and make sure that people who are getting cared for through pregnancy loss are not under any threat of penalty. And sadly, we've already seen the governor come out and strongly denounce this bill, which is surprising, honestly, because this shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be pretty obvious. Miscarriages are different than abortions. Right. But when you insert that political nature to it, all of a sudden, Democrats don't agree with that.
When we speak about abortion, there are those who are trying to undo our abortion, or really to make it open abortion here in the state of Wisconsin, I believe, through all trimesters. Here is Assembly Bill 589, Senate Bill 547, that would eliminate certain abortion-related regulations.
Yeah, and what this bill would do is it would get rid of all of the row error restrictions that we placed on abortion under the Walker administration. There was a lot of pro-life wins, things like making sure that a woman has to see an ultrasound of her baby, making sure that there was a 24-hour waiting period, all these different things that were really good things to make sure that we had informed consent, that a woman truly understood the decision that she was making if she decided to get an abortion. But again, the abortion lobby and some of the Democrats in the legislature, we see that their heart and their concern really is they want to advance a pro-abortion agenda through all 9 months, unfettered access, without any restrictions or even second thoughts to informed consent.
And Jim, to add on to that too, so specifically that bill takes away the requirement that you have to go in person to see a doctor to access an abortion pill. And the vast majority of abortions are now no longer surgical, they're through the chemical abortion pill. But that doesn't make it any more safe just because it's a pill. Mm-hmm. In fact, a recent study showed that 11% of women are seeing adverse effects such as sepsis, excessive bleeding, ER visits because of the abortion pill. And so a national survey was recently done that over 70% of people say that we should retain that requirement for women to see a doctor in person before receiving the abortion pill. So over 70% of people agree with that law, and that bill would take away that specific requirement.
Friends, we're going to open phone lines here and give you opportunity. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a brief comment on any of these things, we will show you some more legislation. Here, there's many more bills, but we want to take an opportunity to hear from you as well. If you have a question about one of these or you'd like to issue an opinion on them, pick up your phone, give us a call, 414-935-3030. 414-935-3030. Toll free, you can reach us at 800-733-8830. That's 800-733-8830. If you'd like to text in your question or brief comment, be sure to include your first name and the city you're texting from. And you can text this number, 414-459-9638. 414-459-9638. 38 here for inFocus. But we're covering lots of ground here this evening, lots of matters that are going on. Right now, legislation introduced that would do away with all restrictions on abortion in our state. We are seeing also just some of the ranked choice voting. We talked about that issue. A local real tax referendum. Should the public be able to have a vote on it before your city council or your county board of supervisors puts in a wheel tax on you? We certainly talk about the Equal Rights Amendment, Celebrate Bisexuality Day, and other issues here as well. So our number 414-935-3030 or 800-733-8830. You can text in your question or brief comment. Send that to 414-459-9638. The program's inFocus. There is also a couple of bills on this matter too. Assembly Bill 588 and Senate Bill number 589 that says there is a statutory right to contraception.
I think it goes back to what Sam said before, and we see this, and this has been since I think a couple months ago. You had us on, and we saw Senator Tim Kaine saying rights come from government; they don't come from God.
Right.
And here's just another example saying, well, if you don't support a pro-contraceptive, you don't support a pro-abortion ideology, well, we're just going to make those into a right so that you have to pay for them. But what really is concerning, we see, is what they would require religious entities, organizations to then also fund and pay for contraceptives against their religious liberties and freedoms.
Here's a statement that was made by Representative Subek. Every Wisconsinite should have the freedom to make their own reproductive health care decisions and plan their own futures. In the face of unprecedented political attacks on access to reproductive health care, the Right to Contraception Act would protect our ability to make our own family planning decisions.
Jim, and that's all nice language there, but what they fail to say is also that the way they define contraception includes abortifacients as well. So I think that's really concerning how they phrase those items. And thankfully, once again, there's a Democrat-led bill. They're the minority party, so at this point, that bill will not see the light of day, but it could if the Democrats take hold of the legislature.
Let me mention this pair of bills as well. This just introduced on October 24th, Assembly Bill 568, Senate Bill number 566. And this is coverage of infertility services under health policies and plans. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Jim, so this is an insurance mandate to cover IVF services or in vitro fertilization. And so there's a kind of a nationwide debate, a local debate on what IVF, the role that it plays in infertility issues. And I think the biggest concern is just the ethical side of this right now. Just so people are functionally understand, IVF creates embryos, which is after the point of conception. So from our perspective, those are unique individual human lives. And then essentially they cryofreeze them, and so they're viable human beings in these embryos, and then some people can create, I've seen some celebrities create 20, 30, 40 of them, and they're just kind of on ice. And so there's really an ethical discussion as we are the same way we would discuss cloning of, is this actually an ethical thing to do to human life? And right now it's kind of the Wild West. There aren't a lot of regulations or guardrails on how do you do this? What's this process look like? And so just guaranteeing a right to it and insurance coverage of it seems a little premature before you actually have the ethical discussion of how do we handle these embryos.
Mm-hmm. Medical marijuana is something that's coming up here again, and I didn't print out the entire bill, but it's Assembly Bill 547, Senate Bill 534. And this is 100 plus pages, this legislation is itself. But this is really the camel's nose coming into the tent, isn't it?
Right, Jim. So I don't blame you for printing it out. I did that myself, and the printer was going and going and going for a while, because you're right, it's a lot of pages and a lot to read through. Ultimately, this is a bill authored by Republicans. It's already had a hearing in the Senate. And so what you see is this highly contrived system to legalize marijuana with parameters for medical conditions. I think it was concerning to see is that with a slight changes to the bill, it could very quickly turn into a recreational program, which states who have gone down the medical legalization more often than not do all end up legalizing marijuana one way or another fully. Mm-hmm.
And friends, we just did a crosstalk program on this topic here as well, and with the American College of Pediatricians very much in opposition to going down the pathway of medical marijuana. And I would encourage you to crosstalkamerica.com. We had a full hour with a medical doctor dealing with that very issue. Our phone number here for inFocus, 414-935-3030. That's 414-935-3030, 800-733-8830. To take your questions here tonight or comments that you have on any of these pieces of legislation. There's a lot that's going on. Matter of fact, I saw some 267 pieces of legislation have been introduced since our guests were last with us on the legislative update. And at the same time, we're just covering a fraction of those many bills, not even 10%, but maybe 10% of the bills that have been introduced. But it's like the wild, wild west out there. And why are things so furious right now?
Well, Jim, the legislature kind of works in ebbs and flows. So it's a 2-year session, but they're kind of busy periods. And right now there's this kind of all of this, they were off, they did budget, in June and July, and now they went back home and they kind of rested up, got in touch with their constituents, were meeting with people back in their districts, and then came back to work in September, and all of a sudden you feel this pressure and this rush of time. I feel like we joked about at the beginning of the segment that time is slipping by very quickly, and the same as with the legislature. They're feeling that pressure of, Thanksgiving's coming up, Christmas, they're going to take a break for obviously those holidays, and so there's a very short window of time for them to act on things. So there's this kind of real rush to kind of get things out, get things, get hearings done, get some votes on these things, because the time is short for them to act on some of these items.
Let me get a couple of texts, and this is from Marie in Grafton. What is the opinion of Wisconsin Family Council on action regarding contacting legislators? Is it okay to send emails or letters or make calls, referring to multiple bills that we're presenting here tonight in the program? They're thankful for the information. What's the best way to be in contact, and especially when we're talking about so many issues that are of great concern?
Yeah, I would say thank you so much for reaching out and following up on those questions. And I would say all of the above, they're all good contacts. Sam used to work in the legislature, so he probably has some ideas of what works best. But one of the things I've really appreciated that Sam's mentioned at our different community events that we run, and what we're seeing from an impact perspective is as people show up to these legislative town halls, all these state representatives, state senators, they do meetings in their own community where they hear what constituents believe about different issues. And it's a great opportunity to build that personal relationship to where the legislator knows about you and the staff knows about you, and they also know about your concerns on different issues.
Sam, are they doing that? Are legislators really holding these meetings, or is just a few, select few?
It kind of depends on their preference, but a lot of legislators do hold town halls, whether it's at a library or a school or an actual town hall. So many legislators do that, and it is, Daniel's right, it's a great opportunity to engage face-to-face with your legislator. I always encourage people, if you have something, or if you want to just build that relationship with them, that is the most impactful way, because, letters, phone calls, emails are really good, really important, and I would encourage you to do that. If there's anything you're passionate about, reach out to your local, assemblyman or senator and let them know your thoughts on that. But even more so, that next step of going face-to-face and talking with them really does have an impact, especially that consistent impact of meeting with them, not just one time or one-off, but if you go to multiple town halls, they start to recognize you, they start to know your name, where you're from, and so there is that opportunity to build a bond with a person. Even if they disagree with you on a topic, you're able to have that respectful dialogue back and forth. And I'll say, just as a staffer, I personally like emails or phone calls a little better than letters, because I usually have to sit there and type out all the letters. But whatever method is best for you, I think is the best way to reach out to people. And so I encourage that engagement, because if you're not engaged, they're not hearing from you, then they're going to get it from somebody else. And so that perspective might not be yours. And so feel free to reach out to those offices. They have staff who are taking that input and compiling it, giving it to the legislator to make sure that they're informed what their district wants.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd say too, and this is really the heart of our organization, our ministry, is so often we think of the federal government as that biggest piece of government, but the federal government can be so hard for us to reach. It feels so far away. There's so many people paying attention and following up, but the state and those local levels, those are the easiest parts of government to be able to impact and influence. And regardless of whatever party your different state representative or state senator is from, you have an opportunity to speak into them and influence them. And even Wisconsin, we're unique where for any of these public hearings for these bills we're talking about, any Wisconsin resident can come and speak their opinion on these bills as well.
Let me get another question in. Oh, by the way, let me give you the legislative hotline number, because there's a number that goes into Madison, and they can always provide you direct numbers to your legislators and get more information. That number is 800-362-9472. That's the legislative hotline, 1-800-362-9472. I'll say it one more time, 1-800-362-9472. And again, they will give you a direct number to your legislative office, help you with other general questions. Years ago, they used to take messages and write them up here for each legislator, but more so than not, they are just passing on some additional information to you. Here's another question. This is from Bill in Milwaukee. Do we vote tomorrow? No, not in Milwaukee. Right.
Yeah. I know Fond du Lac area. There's some places in Green Lake County, Sheboygan County for municipal judge, where we own our house where we used to live in Village of Rosendale. We have a municipal judge election, but most of them are just going to be sporadic or out there. If you're wondering if you have an election, you can go to myvote.wi.gov to see if you do have an election where you are.
Okay. Again, that's myvote.wi.gov. What's on my ballot? You can click on that and get the information here. Let me mention this bill as well, and kind of interesting, this is Senate Bill 538, Assembly Bill 510, regarding about statements made as evidence in prosecution for prostitution.
Right, Jim. So kind of the baseline of this is that if a person contacts law enforcement and they reference that they're engaged in prostitution, that can't be held against them, specifically if they need emergency or health services. But I think the broader thing to be aware of is the names that are on that list. The people who are pushing this specifically have openly and boldly said that they want to legalize prostitution, full stop. Any sex work, the selling of their body is fair game, and they want it to be legalized. And one of the names on that list is Francesca Hong, who, according to the most recent Marquette Law poll, is the leading Democrat candidate for governor. And so it's just something to pay attention to. Is that a central pillar of the Democrat platform that they're going to legalize prostitution? I think maybe the media needs to ask that question.
Let's just sneak in. We've only got about a minute to discuss this here. And this is, there are a lot of parents who have opted out of the public education system as such, and they've gone to like a virtual school. This is Senate Bill 602, just introduced last week, October 30th, that would prohibit a virtual school from participating in a parental choice program.
Yeah, I think this is just another shot across the bow that we see from these Democrats that really want to attack the school choice program. And many of these families that are doing virtual schools online, and really what they're trying to do is they're trying to target Academy of Excellence through this bill. And many of those families, they're going to choose a homeschool route. They're not choosing a public school route regardless. But really what they want to do is they want to attack these school choice programs in order to have more families go to public school. But these families ultimately will end up probably choosing a homeschool option instead. But what we would argue as an organization is that when we give parents options are always a good thing, because when there's different options in different areas of competition, that's when education is able to excel, because there's different areas where public schools, private schools, and homeschools are all competing with one another to give kids the best opportunities.
We are going to have to leave it there tonight, gentlemen. Thank you both for coming and giving this legislative update.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And again, friends, we have Daniel Degner with us, Sam Krebs as well from Wisconsin Family Council, Wisconsin Family Action. The main website here, wifamilycouncil.org. You can reach out to them. Stay informed. Say, sign me up. Keep me informed on issues. They'll take your email. They'll send out blast when issues are coming up to inform you. 1-888-378-7395. We want to thank you for joining us here tonight on TV30's inFocus program for a monthly legislative update, and invite you to join us each weekday or each Monday night at the same time as we deal with issues impacting you. God bless you. Thanks for watching.